Alrighty, welcome back, traders. What is going on? Let's actually fix this here for the camera. There we go. Nice. All right. What is happening, guys? I want to start out by saying I jinxed myself. If you watched last month's recap, I remember saying either in the beginning or the end that I thought I was getting really good. I thought August, which is usually a rougher month for me, turned out to be a really great month. So I was like, what if, my new low end is the 50, 60, 70, 80, 90K range versus previous years where, like, if I have a rough month, it's like 20, 30, 40K, right? It's on the lower five-figure range. Obviously, that went back to bite me in the butt. September is a 22K month, which, again, is still great, right? If I average 20K a month, every single month, that's $250,000 a year. By no means is that not a very livable and healthy salary. That is great. However, again, we're talking points, we're talking performance, we're talking analysis. This is my lowest profitable month of the year, besides May, which is the unprofitable month of the year due to my FFIE blow up. Other than that, every month has been profitable, and it's been well above 60, 70, 80K range. This is by far the lowest of the bunch. Now, partly and mainly due to a few factors, but I would say mainly I couldn't get anything going. Whether it was partially filled on winners, whether it was maybe took a loss and then remade back that loss with a smaller win, whether it was just general lower win rate, right? The first 3 weeks here, I was almost perfectly 1-to-1 win rate and 50%, 1-to-1 risk reward and 50% win rate. Like I just could not get anything going, and it really wasn't until the last week here that I actually got some kind of streak going. And honestly, we'll look in the trades. It wasn't any one big winner. It was honestly the same size winners from all of the previous month. I just didn't take a loss this week. I literally went for, 8 for 8 or something like that. So instead of almost every single day, I know it doesn't look like it here, but I think every single day of these first 3 weeks, there was a loss in here. So whether it was I had a big green day and I was taken aback by a loss, or I just took multiple losers or one loser to give me a red day, there was just a lot of losers up in here. And this week was the final week that I just had like 8 winning trades in a row and around the same average win that I've been having, which was on the low end. As you can see, 4,300 and a 5K average loser. Like, this is actually negative for score. It's awful. So really the reason I'm not even profitable is because of this 61% win rate that got bumped up from literally this week. It was 50% almost perfectly before this week. Percentage is bad, 17 to 16%. It's just all bad. I almost feel unprofitable this month because I left it up to just, I don't want to say chance, but the streak at the end. Had I not had a few winners in the row at the end, I would have been break even, if not losing. It could have been the opposite. I could have had a streak of losers, and it would have gone the complete opposite direction. So I kind of just left it up to the market and the circumstances that I was dealt with. It worked out, which is great, but by no means was it a strong month in any way, shape, or form. So without further ado, I think this will be a shorter one. You'll get the gist and the trend pretty quickly here of how this month went. And so let's jump right in. Week 1, a lot of gap and craps. In fact, if you were in either some of the Clover webinars, I think I even mentioned on like Wine Wednesday and stuff, or some of the Good Morning Nasdaq streams, I think the last week of August and the first week of September was all gap and craps. Like, forget a win streak or a losing streak. It was a gap and crap streak. Like, if I had not taken gap and craps more seriously this year to trade them, because all the previous years I rarely ever traded them, I might have gone 2 weeks with no trading. I mean, seriously, it was every single day gap and crap, and there was no other setup that I even had available for me to play, even if I wanted to play it. So this first 4 days was literally just gap and craps. So we're not going to go over all of them, but I'll quickly show you kind of how it felt and how it actually went, given that it was a 4K, 5K week. So not much happened. I would call it break even, considering that's only really one win. I'm one win away from, or one loser away from being break even on the week, so to speak. First one was Wint. It actually, you don't see it, but it actually was this day on September 4th. It doesn't look like a gap of crap, but technically it did sell off from 8 down to low threes on this day, and then gapped up to about 450. So that actually doesn't look like much, but it actually is a pretty big gap up. And I think it was a gap up just for whoever was selling to just sell more, because that's exactly what it did. If we go into the intraday, on the 4th here. Go there. Really awesome fader. This one was a really sick, straightforward, to the point fader. I luckily actually did get filled right before it halted. You see the small gap down on this volatility halt. If we go into the actual trades or my actual screenshots, like I said, I did luckily get filled right before the halt down. It gapped down a little bit. The rest was history. Never touched those prices again, and then got a great fade, and I covered into the close at red green. I actually probably should have covered into this panic. Now, obviously, in hindsight, it's the low, but normally I will cover portion, if not all of it, when it first goes red green, because not all gap and craps, if not most gap and craps, even go towards red green. So, but it is what it is. Doesn't matter whether I covered here or an hour later. It was back to the same cover. Locked in about 6,700 there, so it was a bit smaller. I feel like this should have been bigger, but then again, it was only $1.75, $1.85 to downside. And even though and I actually didn't fill at 5, I filled at like 480, 490-ish, somewhere in there. So didn't have much size in this one, but still a winner, so we'll take it. 6,700 is not bad by any means. Next one is Hoth. Hoth is also on the 5th. This actually ended up green, so I took a loss on this one. If we go into the daily chart or intraday on the 5th, just didn't really get anywhere, right? And in fact, I actually think this would have been actually a break-even trade. Clearly, it's from anywhere into these top spikes to where it closed at was pretty break-even. Maybe there's a world where I could have covered the lows, but honestly, I definitely remember hoping it would have made new lows and went like below 1. But if you look at the trades, I remember actually stopping out when I shouldn't have. Just an unnecessary first scratch loss that resulted in this. This was the loss here. Just going pretty much shorting at the lows and then stopping over highs. That actually being the high, reshorting on a lower high kind of idea, and then just getting chopped around pretty much all the day and then covering for break even into the close. So lost 5,200 on this, and that was pretty much all here. Right, this second trade here was just a break-even move, and again, I probably was up a bit here, but again, I was very not convicted. But I said I'm just not going to cover anything sub 1. I think it should fade. It didn't, and so unfortunately, this loss I look back and I'd be like, it was kind of unnecessary. I hate the chase and the weakness. Did I know it was going to spike one more time? No. If I did, I would have avoided it. But it's just a world where I hate chasing this after this stuff. At least try to get into a bounce, and maybe the loss would have been smaller. But I just don't like that feeling of how this went down, and had to pretty much again give away most of my previous win on WINT. And so again, that will be the trend you see here. Right, East is the next one. We'll go right into it before we even show the daily chart. But this one was good. This one was a great fader. I actually made 5,600 on this even after this loss. So very similar to Hoth, but I mean, I guess it has more downside. It's almost like, it looks like Hoth as if Hoth actually faded to sub 1. This one actually went to the mid ones all the way to 138, which is great. But what annoys me the most is that had I not taken this loss, and I know for a fact I shouldn't have, because my risk was $3, and guess what? The high was like $2.99 or $3 exactly. It never actually broke $3. I kind of prematurely and emotionally thought that oh crap, here it comes. It's going to immediately skip to $3.05 or $3.10, and I thought I was being smart by taking the last bit of the ask at $3. Little did I know there was probably a hidden seller there, and $3 didn't budge at all. So it was one of those losses where I thought I was going to take it, but the reality is, had I just waited for $3 to actually break, I never was actually going to. And so then I did reshort, hated this reshort, again, it's at the lows. Don't love that. I did luckily stick to my 3 risk and didn't get chopped up in this chop for the next, 30 minutes or so. And then finally the fade started. It actually got really ugly towards the end of the day with this kind of ugly candle. And then again, made my loss back, and then plus up 5,600. But again, still bugs me, because this was an unnecessary loss. And yeah, maybe this entry is lower than where my reshort was. But even then, I mean, I think I would have made closer to $7,000 or so, maybe closer to 8. I mean, this is a pretty bigger percentage fade from the mid to low twos to the mid to low ones. I wouldn't call it 50% pull, but like a 40% plus pull. So definitely could have been in the $7,000-8,000 range. So that was annoying. And this is the daily chart. Huge range to the downside when you look at it from a daily perspective. So that was really sick. Next one was Wheeler. I don't even remember what day this was on. Had to have been on the 6th. It had to be on the 6th on this gap crap day. Or not a gap and crap, but a day 2 gap. And a lot of day 2s typically aren't very successful. It's harder for them to hold up, especially if they gap a little too much. So if we go into the chart, Yeah, and as you can see, it just didn't work out in my favor. We'll look at the trades. Glad I actually stopped out over highs here. It was a bit annoying in the moment because it immediately pulled back and then pulled back to where it was pretty much all afternoon or all late morning. Which honestly, here I made me think like, great, this is where it fades without me, and this is where I again took a loser that should have maybe could have would have been a winner had I made a better trade plan. But yes, eventually did come back late day, and it would have stopped me out either way there. So this is just a loser of what 5,400 that just never was going to be anything special. The one thing I will say though, and this doesn't really have much merit other than the fact of like there's just some gap and craps as I've seen so many this year. Like you just get that feeling of like, hey, I probably shouldn't be in this one. And I remember thinking that like right around here, right? I just thought to myself, I'm like, something about this doesn't seem right. And it's almost I almost like contemplate the win versus the loss. And I'm like, you know what, if I lose on this, it won't feel great. And if I win on this, I won't care. And unfortunately, I just didn't listen to that voice and I let it go higher and then I stopped out, right? Again, easy to say in hindsight that it would have worked. It would have been a different story had I covered and then it actually worked. But again, it was like the emotional risk reward of it, like I've talked about in previous videos. And I just knew if I took a loss, I was going to be very annoyed. And if I covered and missed a gain, I wasn't really going to care. So kind of wish I listened to that because ergo, another loser on the boat or on the page there. So that resulted again to I guess you call it a plus 1R if you want to call it. If 1R for me is like a 5K winner or a 43K winner or 4,300 winner, that's where I'm at for week 1. Week 2, same thing. Finished the week negative 2K. So again, a whole lot not going on. I don't know if that made any sense. And one thing I'll note too is that borrow costs were super high here. So even though after week 1 and 2, I was up a little under $3,000. The reality is my borrow fees were already kind of racking up at this point, and so I was definitely down a few grand if I do remember correctly. But anyways, we'll just go into the trades. Let's get rid of some of these tabs here, save some room. The first one I want to mention was actually Lace because we actually caught this live on the Good Morning NASDAQ stream on this red day. I made 8,500, which is cool, and I was happy with it. Unfortunately, looking back in hindsight, it's a bit frustrating only because I covered super early, which again, didn't frustrate me in the moment. I'm happy how I traded it. But when then you add on the rest of the factors that I'm going to talk about in the rest of this video, it's like, damn, this would have been really nice had this been a bigger winner for me. Because it's like I wasn't really given that many opportunities to really move the needle for my month. And this was one of them. I just covered early. So it's like, had I been able to just see into the future and realize how much kind of chop this month would have had, making a bigger win on this one would have really helped move the needle. But again, I'm speaking in hindsight, I'm speaking in past and future. It is what it is. But it just, as I reflect back, that's kind of how it makes me feel about this one, which is red green, I think was somewhere in the 9s. So I remember a lot of myself and other traders didn't want to chase it, but I did slightly chase at least a starter on it. On red green pre-market, and then out the open it just died, just got clobbered. I remember covering it all, I think in towards 7, and then what do you know, it goes down to nearly 4. So a whole $3 share lower. There's no way it would have held that long, but maybe there definitely was a world I thought, it could probably do 6. So even an extra $1 share would have definitely made a bit of a difference. I made 8,500 on this one, but definitely could have been over 10, 12K-ish. If you look at the trades here, and you can see this price action actually play out live. Me, Huddy, and Dom were on stream. If you go to Clover's channel and under playlists, the Good Morning NASDAQ live streams for September 11th, we get to see this live, which is really cool. But again, got clobbered way, way lower than I expected. Again, at almost $4, down like 50%. Is absolutely crazy. But yeah, solid one there. Unfortunately, though, I gave a lot of those gains back. So again, I actually think I remember this specifically. By the time the stream ended, that was like my peak euphoria. Like I should have just ended the day there, been up 8,500 and been fine, because I think from there I then gave the gains back away on CNEY, which again was a gap and crap, or at least a gap and crap attempt. Obviously, it didn't do that. It squeezed very high after that. It was, again, September 11th. Let's go into it. Yeah, I remember I think I got chopped around. Before I even look at the trades, if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure I took a loss, if not 2 on here, because the loss is 8,800, which is definitely more than I'm really willing to lose on it when it comes to gap and craps. So I want to guess there was 2 attempts. I just don't remember which. I do remember this squeeze being a complete, so annoying. I actually thought this was going to work, and then for it to rip back, I know that bugged a lot of people, including myself. What do you know? Here we go. So, yeah, got short, covered over those highs, reshorted, cover again. So maybe 2 mini losses here. Shorted again. This looked like it worked. You kind of significant lower high and then a rollover, which is great. Covered, I think, a third here, if I remember correctly. Obviously, it was not the full size. But however, I do remember when it was around like the 80s and 90s when I covered here, I remember I could have covered it all for break even. I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, hey, I could just cover here for break even. It would be pretty solid. But I said, no, don't trade my P&L. Let's try to trust it. This is a great rollover midday. If I'm giving it patience, there's a world where this could be back to low day, if not lower into the 70s or 60s. I just need to hold for a couple hours. Obviously, that was completely incorrect. It had a spike out of literal nowhere. Perfectly midday, so I covered the rest for a loss. I think Gay gave away all of any gains from here and then back to what my loss was here. So total 8,800 down on the day, or on the ticker here, which again gave back all of my lace gains. If you're not noticing the trend by now, it's like win some, lose the exact same amount. Win some, lose the exact same amount. So that was frustrating. There was also TAN-H, and this is just a dumb long. I actually lost money on longs on the month of September. On this day, also September 11th. Why I bought this, I don't know. I guess I was convinced that it was going to break out over this like 26 or 25.85 level before actually doing it. Because once it died, I look at the chart like this is a shortened resistance. Like this is a terrible looking chart. Now it looks okay. Like now it looks like it might start grinding back to actually do the breakout. But I remember taking the loss and then taking like almost double the loss in slippage, and I'm just looking at myself like, Kyle, you idiot. Like, what are you doing trading this? And again, as you see it, like, guess who chases the breakout level? Like me, like right into it. It couldn't be any worse. It's one thing to buy the breakout pretty early to have a good risk reward and be somewhat confident the breakout will work. That's fine. I know a lot of traders do that. I have done that sometimes myself. And that's not even that bad, like I'm saying. But it's worse to then buy in anticipation of the breakout right below the breakout level. Right? It's one thing to be super early for the reason of being super early, but then it's another thing to be like as late as you can be without proving the breakout's going to happen, right? If I'm going to buy, it should be either A, super early and give a better risk reward like I've been saying, or you buy it to make sure the setup's actually going to work when it breaks out. And this didn't break out. It did not get over that level. It perfectly double topped. And what am I doing? I'm buying like pretty much so close to that level without it breaking out that I'm putting myself just in a terrible risk reward situation if the breakout doesn't work. And so lo and behold, it doesn't work. I then take massive slip, and instead of cutting it for around like 21 or 20, I cut down like at 19. So I maybe not double my loss, but certainly like 25% more to my loss. And so I lost 4,200 on this one, when should have been maybe 25, 3K-ish, somewhere in there. So I remember just being, again, very annoyed because like I said, from a risk reward standpoint, I picked the worst time to be buying. Like buy way earlier, like closer to 20 off of like these bases forming, or buy it once it's over the breakout level, not when it's right before about to break out. Because in the event it doesn't, like I've been saying, let's get rid of that. I'll close my email. It's a terrible time to buy. It's a terrible just position to be in. So I remember being very annoyed at that. Like, Kyle, you idiot. Why would I buy that? But then also, this was one of the bigger winners of the month for me. Another gap and crap, BCTX. Was this on the 11th too? Yeah. Made, I think, 11 or 12 grand on this one. Like 11 grand. And again, partly worked well because it did an offering. If you're short enough gap and craps, you do catch, not a ton, but your fair share of midday offerings. Sometimes they will do that. And this one was a sick one. It was already a really good fader to start. I mean, it could have closed at 120 here. It would have been a good winner, but it got even better when it did an offering and went down to 65 cents like by close. So looking at the chart there, really sick. Pretty happy with this one. But again, I'm only happy with it because I got lucky with an offering, right? Covered some after the kind of started going sideways at 70, 75-ish, or I think it was low 70s, and then covered the rest into like what looked like a little bit of a fade, but it was really just weakness in the close. It's kind of hard to tell when it's such a big range from now 2 to 60 cents. But yeah, made 11K on this one, so that was really sick. But again, so do the math. 8,500 from Lace, 1100 or 11 grand from BCTX, but then I lose 8800 from CUNEY, and then I lose 4300 on 10H. It's like, I'm giving most of my gains away, and I'm not even up my average win on that day. Like, again, I could have, should have, would have just taken my lace trade and been done for the day, right? And again, I know it's not how that perfectly works, but it's like, again, the silly little paper cuts and the random spike on SENY really is annoying. And then the unneeded terrible positioning of that long on 10H, like just remove any one of those details. This should be a 5-figure day, right? And I know it's just one day of the month, but again, hopefully you're seeing the trend here of like just what my month looked like. It's like all these little nitpicking mistakes that just you don't think means much, but then you look at the entire month as a whole, and it's like, my gosh, like these little things make a difference. The margin of error for this month was just so infinitesimally small. So that was pretty much the month. I know I had other trades here, but again, the 11th really just gives a good picture of like how this week also went. Again, finished down on the month 2K, quite annoying. Week 3, same thing, a little bit different where I had, again, a bunch of small green days, but one bigger, the biggest red day of the month, which again took away most of the profits to only finish up the week 3,500. Again, plus or minus 1R, let's call it, of gains or losses on the week, just really getting nowhere. This one, however, this week in particular had the biggest miss when I talked about like partially filling winners, which is PLSE, which I want to talk about. PLSE, beautiful 3 green days, right? We gapped up from 480 to about 680, ran 1 to 3 days from then the high 6s to as high as 14. This is the perfect concoction for me to look for first red day, right? 3 beautiful green days in a row. Perfectly extended. The volume isn't that great. I wish the volume was going up as it went up versus down. It did the opposite. But again, still enough for me to give a first red day, and it had a first red day. The problem was I filled a 10th of what I wanted. So if we go into, let's actually go into like a month chart just to show the previous day and the red day. Previous close was up here at like, what was this? Just like 1450, somewhere in there. And again, I partially filled on this move, red-green. I think I chased a little bit into like the 1430s, 1440s. Again, very liquid. If you look at the pre-market volume, I mean, it's not even very low. I mean, we're talking maybe a couple thousand shares a minute, not even, some minutes with no volume at all. And so naturally, I wanted to fill total like 7,000 shares. I filled like 700. And unfortunately, it gapped down so much by the open that opening sub 14 at 1370 and again the red green's like 1450. I'm just not going to short that. I need an entry above 14 to make the risk reward worth it. It never even got over the price again. It then pulled from the high 13s down to pretty much the low 12s within the first hour or two. Covered my 700 shares that I had for like a $2 gain, made like $1,400, $1,500. But again, you do the math. Had I been 10x the size which I wanted, instead of 700 shares, do 7,000 shares and still make the $2 share that I wanted, that turns a $1,400 gain into a $14,000 gain. Massive difference. And again, we'll look at the trades or the trade. I called it place 10th fill because that's exactly what I got. Again, barely filled. And again, I tried to get all 7,000 in pre-market, like full size. Wasn't even going to wait. I said, you know what? I'm going to trust this. I want all size right now. Didn't fill a thing. Or not affiliate thing, filled 700 of the 7,000, and yeah, the rest was history. Just didn't even get a spike. I was hoping this was going to pop to 14, like on here, this move, but of course it topped out at like 1350. So yeah, just again, perfect example, and this is just one of probably 5 others that aren't as important, but this one is the most significant in terms of had I filled full size, how big of a winner it would have been. I mean, gosh, another 14K win, you could argue almost doubles my month. And not doubles, but like 80% more, 70% more. It makes a big difference. So again, it's just back to that margin of error, which is so thin in September. So that's annoying. And then on top of that, I think the 19th comes with my biggest loss of the month with this 1,200 or 12,900 SGN. There is a bit of revenge trading here. I'm not going to lie or front. That's 100% what I did here on this one. Because again, if I'm only willing to lose maybe $6-7 grand at most for Gap and Craps, and anything over that's a little too much, I lost nearly double that, almost 13 grand. So very, very frustrating. technically, yes, if anyone timed it right, by the time this kind of choppy uptrend was over, there was a decent fade from 70 cents down to maybe the 40s. But again, timing's everything, and I was on the front side. So you can look at that here. Pretty much took 2 losses of 6K each. Got too antsy. And again, if you know how I like to trade gap and craps, I like waiting for a lower low. And if that means I need to be patient for 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes in the open for an actual new lower low to get set, and then short that kind of the breakdown, so to speak. It's not really a breakdown, but just that a trend change of that new lower low being made, then so be it. And for whatever reason, I just got FOMO in thinking that, oh my gosh, this looks so weak out the open. Let me just get short without any like trend really forming yet. And yeah, sure, it looks like a trend because of the first, 5 minutes is selling off. But then once it bottoms, it goes straight up. And so, of course, I'm now cutting it for a loss. Not even over high day, over this little last pre-market bump, which is just silly because there was more pre-market action and resistance here. But why I'm covering over this level of like 54, 55, I don't know. It just terrible trade planning on my part. And again, had I waited, well, one, this reshort is not even a lower low. It's terrible. I could argue this move here is breaking kind of like this mini dip of holding, right? If this is like this is the first lower low. This is a new lower low. Maybe this breakdown, I could justify, okay, it's breaking here. Maybe there's a world, and it did work. It did pull back a bit, but again, held up and then continued higher. So either way, it still would have been a loss. I'm just annoyed that this first one was probably unnecessary. I'm okay with this kind of a short into this action and then just covering it over high day again. But this one, giving me 2 losses of 6K is where it gets it to like after some slippage and commissions, gets it to that 13K loser. It's like, again, it's with the trend of the month. I feel like a broken record at this point with whether again, partial wins, double the losses, or 1 loss and 1 gain, making the overall gain or loss less or more than it should be. You get the gist. So that was kind of the result of month or week 3. Again, 3,500, nothing special, nothing crazy. And then we get into the streak that I've been talking about on week 4. It's kind of impressive that, again, I never made more, I think, this week than a 7 or 8K winner. All these winners in here were like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8K. I just had like 10 of them, 8 to 10 of them, I believe. And it added up to 32K, which is actually really cool to see that small gains can add up. You just also can't have that many losers, which is what I did the first 3 weeks. So if we go into some of those, Lace was actually 2 of them, and actually was a big portion. So if we go back to the daily chart, by the way, I'm actually pissed about Lace because I literally shorted it at 14 or at 15 on this day. And then we'll talk about this in October, but thought about swinging it for a few days and didn't because the overnight interest rate was just it was like 700%. Lo and behold, 3 days later, it's down to freaking 9. It's like, oh, God. Oh, another great gain missed for October. So maybe we'll have the same trend in October. We'll see. But anyways, I actually made good money on the 24th and 25th for Lace. Same exact trend as the September 11th, where in pre-market it was just super, super weak. And so I did get short pre-market again, and that allowed me to at least have a position for it to fade. If we go in to the intraday, got short all up in here around like 17, did pull back. And again, I think myself and a lot of people were thinking, okay, last time it got clobbered 50%. Let's see how much it gets clobbered this time. It did, previous close is what? Like in the 18s. It did go down to 13s, high 13s. So it was pretty good, but I think myself and others included were waiting for like 12s, maybe 11s. Unfortunately, it didn't do that. It did actually bounce, but I did actually I added more to the bounce in this like 17 plus range and then covered it in this like 15 plus chop the rest of the day. Ultimately ended up making I think $5,500, nothing crazy, but I'm happy with how I traded it because this one right here. Didn't cover any on this pull. Unfortunately, it would have been a much bigger winner had I been able to just cover it all here, not all, but let's say half or a quarter, and then added that size plus this size back to then cover it again. It would have been like 2 trades in one or 2 winners in one. Would have been a little bit better, but it is what it is. We'll take it. What really ended up being better was the second red day. And now we go back to the daily chart real quick. You look at previous days. So this was a red day and then a green day. This was a red day and then a green day. At first, I didn't actually think this red day was going to lead to a second red day because I'm like, clearly the last 2 times it's done this, it didn't do that. Like there's clearly a trend here. However, because this red day offered the lesser of a panic and an actual spike to red green and then a choppy pullback and choppy range for the rest of the afternoon, I thought to myself, because this red day played out differently than both the 2 previous days, that there's more downside here, and it didn't get it all on day 1, that it might get it on day 2. And I'm so glad I had that inkling or that thought, because lo and behold, that's actually what ended up happening. So we go in there. It did spike, right? It did try to actually have a green day for the first couple of minutes. But then once it broke low day and started going red-green, that's when I thought, okay, let's trust this and give this a go. And offered a great fade from the mid-14s all the way down to 11. So really, this panic down to 11 is what I thought was going to happen here. It just needed another 24 hours to kind of digest that and play out. So here's the trade on that one. Again, I didn't want to get chopped around in red-green. I thought if it was going to hold green, I do not want any part of it whatsoever. So I waited for red-green to break. Yes, it bounced a little bit off that level. I thought maybe this was the wrong decision. All I needed was 10 more minutes, and then finally it broke for real, and the rest is history, and we got a nice solid panic, and I covered, I think, like an average of 12, right? Somewhere in this little average. So yeah, great winner there. Locked in like 7,600 there. 7,600. Yeah, that's how I'm saying it, right? Better than the first red day. It's rare that my second red day is better than the first, so that was cool. And then Seal. Seal was a good grab and crap. We just showed the chart there, but let me show you the daily real quick. Let's just go here, because this was a pretty good downside move, especially if you avoided. I think did it just do a reverse split? They had to have, because I don't remember shorting it in the 7s or 8s, but pretty solid move if you avoid this spike, which is what I believe I did. Yeah, I let it spike first, and then I got short on what I would call a lower low, right? Finally, some kind of breakdown of a previous significant low. The unfortunate part, and I'm so glad I adjusted my maybe expectations here, which is I wanted to fill my size on that breakdown, right? If we go into let's go into the intraday. If we go in to that actual price action, when it broke down, this was not 750. I think it was 70 cents. They might have done a 10 for 1 or like a 15 for 1. Maybe it was, I don't know. I remember specifically. I have the chart. I have the picture. Duh. It's 48 cents, 48, 47 cents, somewhere in there. I remember really wanting to get short on that move, like this candle here. I wanted to get short on that breakdown below this like wick and slight bottom at what is now 760s, but back then it was 48 cents. Again, very similar. I didn't fill, I think, even a tenth of what I wanted. There's a few candles in there, which makes it look like it's much, but it wasn't. I partially filled massively, pulled back, and I thought to myself, oh my God, like what are the chances that this never actually bounces? And that's that. And and this is gonna fade without me, and I'm gonna be left with an undersized loser or undersized winner. I then decided, I was like, nope, I'm not gonna let that happen. I'm going to take the position where it stands. And if it does bounce, then, oh well, frustrating. I could have got the same average. But if it doesn't, I'm glad I took it. And I'm so glad I did that, because lo and behold, it actually created this really odd new resistance level at 46. It just could not get over this level for the life of it. Probably tested it like what looks like 10 to 15 times, almost every minute it's testing that level. Did get short my full size into that level pretty early on. I probably could have waited for it to fail a little bit more here, but I just, in the name of FOMO, I decided to just take it. Turns out FOMO was a little bit right. It never did go back to that 70 or that 48 level, ironically. And then not only that, but it offered an incredible fade from the mid 40s down to actually 30. So locked in, 6,700 there. Again, a little bit annoying, because had I filled it all at 48 versus like 45, 3 cents is almost 10% difference. So this definitely would have been closer in the $8,000 range had I filled it all. But again, on the bright side, I am glad I just adjusted my plan and shorted anyway, because had I not, forget 6,700, this would have been like $1,000 win, if that. So I'm glad I adjusted and was a little bit flexible. In the name of FOMO, it actually worked out this time. So that's cool. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Took a small loss on the last day of the month. Really don't remember much about it. Again, had a lot of borrow fees, mainly because I've been swinging some things short. for like almost a month or plus now, which I'll talk about in October because I covered one of them in October and I'm still swinging another for hopefully the end of the year, if not into next year. We'll see. It's a long ways away. But again, that overnight interest happened in October, therefore I count it. So that added up here. Again, win rate went from 50 to about 61 due to the wins at the end of the month. So yeah, made $22,000 on the month. So we'll take it. I'm happy about it. It's better than losing, but the trend, if you've not heard me being a broken record this whole video, is like made some, I lost some, made some, I lost some, couldn't really get anywhere. And so far it feels that way for October, but on a bigger extreme, had 2 pretty good days to start the month, and lo and behold, I have my biggest red day since my FFIE blow up. FFIE lost, almost 400 grand here. There's been no other day that big. Oh, well, thankfully, right? But I lost 20 grand in July, lost 18 grand in August, kept it fairly small in September. I think that was my saving grace to actually being profitable, which is, or at least break even and surviving, is that I didn't let any loss get too overboard. Yes, we had the 13K loser, but that kept me somewhat stable. Unfortunately, today, as I'm filming this video, I tweeted about it. If you go on my Twitter, you'll see that some of the trades I took went 0 for 7. Couldn't find a winner to save my life, and you add them all up, and unfortunately, got just way bigger than I expected. No oversized losses, just 4 to 5K losses each. So you add them up, and you're down 30 grand. It happened very quickly. So unfortunate, but we are technically up 6 grand. We're up 7 grand in the week. Call it another 1R win of a week, roughly speaking. So yeah, hopefully for my own energy sake, that October isn't the same thin margin of error as September was, but we'll see. So anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching. One last thing I do want to mention on the horizon here with call it 3 months left. I am sitting at around $810,000 in gains. The goal would be preferably to get to $1 million. We got $190,000 to go. Again, I haven't had $1 million year since 2021. We had an over $2 million year, and then just under 500,000, and then just 850 last year of 2023, and now we're sitting at 810. So it doesn't happen to happen by any means. I'm not going to force it. I'm not going to try to set profit goals of like it has to happen. And if I average 5 grand a day, then it'll work out. Because again, that's not how trading works. But I would be lying if that underlying number is there, and I'd be like, you know what? It'd be cool to maybe have a good, solid October, November, or December, and pull in $1 million year. And again, it's not really asking that much. If I'm, $190,000 away, that's roughly 60K a month average, which again is actually well below the averages I'm having currently. When I'm winning, it's usually 80, 90. Again, don't want to jinx myself, knock on wood. I said that last month, and I was given a 20K a month, so there is a world where I won't do it. And if it happens, so be it. It doesn't matter. It's a psychological round number of $1 million. Who cares if I make 8 or if I'm making 950 versus $1,020,000? It's just numbers and games in your heads. So I'm comfortable in accepting of whatever happens, but just for a little exciting entertainment value, I am approaching a nice little milestone there. So we'll see. But anyways, guys, make sure to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see how October goes. Again, fingers crossed it is better than how September went. So thanks so much. See you guys next time.